Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. If I'm honest, this is a video I never thought I'd have to make. But the internet has been so crazy today, I feel like I have to say something. And I'm gonna try to get through it without crying. So as you guys know, for many months, I have been working on the Slut palette. It's an amazing palette. It's everything sluts need and want. And I thought that things were going to be great. And then today I found out that my best friend, my former best friend, is releasing a palette called the Whore Palette. Just let that sit in. I know people say sluts and whores are different. I'm not a college professor, so I don't know. But personally, this feels like a very deep personal attack, and I can't let somebody sabotage my life like that. And I know that this is so disappointing for all of you sluts out there, because you deserve palettes too, and that's what I was hoping to do with this project. But because of what happened, I'm sorry, I thought this wouldn't... I've decided to stop production on the Slut palette. And I hope you guys can understand. And I hope that we can all move on from this together. There's so many sluts out there who are amazing. So I just really ask that you guys turn to each other in this time. I can't do this.
Living glam, living rock, living with Jonathan and Katy.
Welcome to Living with Slut and Whore. Who's slut and who's whore?
We'll find out on season 2.
I feel like I'm slut because I'm stupid and wouldn't get money, so I'm just slutty, and you're smart and would at least charge.
That's true. But then, like, in season 2 of our show, we'd get our DNA tested, and I'd be like, I'm 100% whore.
And I'm like, oh, I didn't know.
Like, guess who's the slut now? Welcome to our latest episode. We are having fun here at the Coven headquarters.
So today is an amazing episode. We have probably our most famous guest on.
Absolutely.
Full
Famous,
shade to
powerful.
every single guest we've had on past. You unfamous whores.
Get a Wikipedia, why don't you?
We have Guy Branum on the podcast, which you will be able to listen to shortly. And there's many reasons we had Guy Branum on. He is a mentor to all the little gay boys and all the women out there in comedy, because he truly has tasked himself. He has told me that that is how he sees himself in many ways, which is gracious. But we just need to ask him why we're failing so much at our careers. Yeah. What's going on with that?
Wait, no, what's the deal with our failure? No, he's great. He's a career TV writer. He's done so much, and he's so kind and generous.
Wonderful stand-up, has numerous late nights, a half hour. Like, he's done a lot of stuff. He has a book.
Yeah.
You know, he's writing, he's doing this already came out in the trades. He's rewriting Babette's Feast for the American version, and then he just did the rewrite of Two Weddings and a Funeral. Like, he's truly killing it right now.
Yeah, and I've always liked him, and then he complimented my apartment, and I love him now.
Absolutely. And you know what he said about your apartment, which you will hear in the episode, but I didn't get to say because it was too interesting in conversation. You can't possibly include everything. He said that this color palette was great because so many women are too afraid to go to like these bold colors, which I so agree with, Katy, because if I have to see another fucking room that's all neutrals with pops of color, I'm gonna kill myself. Like, I just want color. I don't need like all gray and then like a golden thing.
I'm literally allergic to neutral bedding.
Ugh,
I hate
gross.
I can take an all white room if it's like bohemian with plants and stuff. I like clean, but I hate that. If you are a modern minimalist, stop even listening to this podcast now. If you're an industrial fan, kill yourself.
I'm going to be constructive here. You should kill yourself. My boyfriend's favorite catchphrase.
Truly, it's an offensive thing to me. It's like, we all like living. We're not living in prison on purpose.
Yes.
And I don't care if you're a little Dorian Gray, 50 Shades of Grey millionaire. I like how in all movies, it's always like, ooh, he's a bachelor. That's why everything's cement.
Right. Which it's like, most bachelors, it's like a dingy apartment with a sock on the floor and a pizza box.
And then if they're wealthy, it's just like a cement block and then I guess chains because they're gonna like whip your little naughty self.
Yes. Also, anyone out there, don't kill yourself.
Please
unless
don't.
you are like us, in which we have 12 lives or are immortal. Then by all means,
go
kill
for it.
yourself and reincarnate. And while you're reincarnating,
Please reincarnate as a maximalista.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I am not. That's it. Anyways, you guys are gonna love this episode. If you are aspiring, if you're an aspiring person in Hollywood, or if you're not, it's like a really great behind the scenes look at how shows get made.
yeah, we're talking about TV writing in particular, but we're also talking about comedy, stand-up, the industry, getting repped, being gay, being a woman, anything that is
T-sets.
not... Yes. Anything that's not mainstream in comedy. And so many people are out in LA or in New York or in other entertainment places trying to make it happen, and it sometimes feels like you can't make anything happen and that no one wants you and everything is a no, regardless of how hard you're working, regardless of your talent. And it feels like sometimes friends around you are just like blossoming and you can't make it work.
Yeah.
So we talked to Guy Branum about that and about how to be less of a scrub.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yes.
So enjoy, guys.
Bye.
You guys may have noticed that I'm unusually large for a homosexual. I am not certain why this is the case. My current working theory is that once my parents realized I was going to be gay, they figured they might as well raise the largest one in the county. If they're not getting grandchildren out of the deal, at least they could get a blue ribbon.
And we're back, sluts. We're here with our guest. This is a very special day.
Very special.
One of my favorite people, legendary comic.
Our favorite people. I want to claim ownership.
Yes. Legendary comic. He has his own album called Effable. He's been on Conan. He's also a prolific comedy writer. He's written for Chelsea Lately, Billy on the Street, the other two, the Mindy Project, and he has 2 movies coming down the bend. He is amazing, and we have him in the apartment. I was going to say in studio, but we don't do this in the studio anymore.
No, we do it in a beautifully, impeccably designed apartment.
Oh, yes, which we just talked about in length. Please welcome Guy Branum.
Yay.
It's a very nice apartment.
Thank
It
you
is.
so much. That means a lot. That
Yes.
really means a lot because I respect your taste.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know that I have the best of taste in visual things, but I do definitely like this apartment. And I was just noticing there are 5 throw pillows on the couch here, the center of which is the grandma-iest.
Yes.
In something that is very like bright and exciting, and I just thought it caught the eye very beautifully.
I love a pop. You know?
Yeah,
Those are also thrift store. Most things are secondhand, which means a lot to me, so that I can tell people I'm like a non-consumer and don't contribute to the destruction of this world. But what do you do?
And having a like a grandma throw pillow is like a good little like Easter egg to usher in your cronehood.
Yeah, it is the secret. It's the only secret thing is how you actually know how old I actually am.
Right.
I would like to say today I was like cleaning out the room that is my office, and I was having to confront the number of vintage tea sets I have purchased since turning 40 years old. And I'm just, there's something about you can get mad at yourself for being that gay guy, or you can just say like, I'm a middle-aged gay man. I do not live in a time where gay men in their 40s have all been killed by a plague. I need to be excited about the
Yes.
vintage teapots
And
that
buy
have
one for everyone
entered
that
my
has.
life.
Truly, that's the way to celebrate it.
And if you ever retire, you should get them appraised and sell the most valuable or the second most valuable, so you can have that like nice going out thing, like in your 70s or 80s when you choose to
Yes.
retire.
And then you can like power play, and like my grandma's at a stage where she keeps, when you go to her house, she gives you like little like file folder labels,
Yeah.
and she goes, put a sticker on anything you want when I'm gone.
Oh, that's adorable.
Which is very cute, but I also feel like it's a little bit like, did you earn this sticker today? I don't know. We'll find out.
Guy, what if you had to choose a place to retire and the options are PV,
Okay.
Sitges or Sitges? I don't know
Yes.
how the,
Wait,
the
what
Catalan.
is what is PV?
Up Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sitges or Sitges.
Is that gay slang? I don't know.
Yeah, PV.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
okay. So PV, Sitges, Spain,
Uh-huh.
Palm Springs, or Provincetown. What would you pick?
I have never done any of the East Coast gay resort situations. I know nothing of Provincetown or Fire Island. It's a boring choice, but I would 100% go with Palm Springs, just because I like California, I like dryness, and I enjoy dates.
Yes.
the Mediterranean is delightful. I've never been to Sitges, but I have been to Nice. The Mediterranean is very calm. It also means that the beaches can be kind of rocky. And Puerto Vallarta, again, I have never been to. It seems adorable. Yes, I've only gone to Mexico in situations where straight women were taking me. Thus, I went to Cabo. But
Can we assume that was a Chelsea
Yes.
handler situation?
And I was supposed to go to Puerto Vallarta with my most recent gentleman, but then we ungentlemaned. And so PVing has never happened.
I can't wait to go. I've still not been either,
Yes.
but I cannot wait.
I own property there, so I don't know about you.
Well, right now there's a big festival going on in Puerto Vallarta called Beef Dip. And it's all like bears, cubs, muscle guys, femme guys. It's like very inclusive, and it's all like, you know, it's like a big like gay takeover, and it's always very gay there. But
Yes.
I really want to go during Beef Dip.
The most fun thing
fun.
About going anywhere else in the west coast of Mexico is you can pull up Grindr and immediately identify how far away Puerto Vallarta is because
Right.
like you get like 2 listings close to you and then 1,000 guys 437 miles away.
Yeah.
I didn't know that PV is that's like the gay city of.
Of Mexico.
Yeah.
It's probably
Well,
that.
I didn't know that.
there's the weird way where you guys don't think about it because you don't have to.
I know.
But like gay vacation destinations, there are only so many.
Sure.
If we go to the Caribbean, it's San Juan or a cruise, or you're not gonna have any fun.
Yeah.
You know.
Especially the Caribbean. It's
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
But it's just it's a little hard, but it's kind of like being a stand-up and just being like, well, I have to live in LA.
Yeah.
Just that thing of like,
Yeah.
I'm gay. If I want to go like to the Mediterranean, I'm going to Sitges or Mexico or Mykonos. Like if I'm going to Mexico, it's Puerto Vallarta.
Right.
Yeah. But you
That's
guys
so
got Palm
true.
Springs, so congrats
Yes.
to that. That was a good. You guys bought early there, and you knew.
You know what? You know where I just went that is actually coming up in terms of its gayness is Lisbon. Lisbon is really killing it.
What the fuck is going on with Portugal and just like tourism generally, but also gay guys? Like,
Okay, well, first of all,
That
I
everyone's
look
going.
Portuguese. Everyone was very disappointed and shocked that I didn't speak Portuguese.
Yes.
But the Portuguese English
you
is like...
do speak Portuguese, you just go "Ow" at the end of all of your Spanish.
Oh, yeah,
You
exactly.
meow.
Their English, by the way, is impeccable. Like better English than the French, than the Spanish. Like impeccable.
There's nothing creepier than the Netherlands. Like I went and did a
yes.
stand-up show in the Netherlands, and the guy who was running it was an English language stand-up show, and I was like, where are you from? How long have you lived here? And he was like, I'm from the Netherlands.
Yes.
I just speak English this well.
Yeah.
But with the Netherlands, at least that's a richer country.
Yeah.
Lisbon, I can describe it this way. Have you ever seen photos of Havana?
Oh, really?
It looks like that, okay, but with a lot more tile. But with the geography of San Francisco, in fact, their bridge looks almost identical to the Golden
People
Gate.
like Casey Lai was just saying that Porto is supposed to like look just like San Francisco.
I've never been, but I thought Lisbon did.
Well, and also, we never talk about the fact that both Spain and Portugal had like fascist dictators until the 70s.
Yes.
Like, which I think impacted, the economy and maybe preserved some architecture by destroying anyone who tried to innovate or change.
Right.
Probably.
Also, you can see there's like weird monuments in like the subways of Madrid that go so and I know like London and Paris has this too, so deep below the city.
Yeah.
You can see how people like went there during the Spanish Civil War to like, escape tanks and artillery fire
Yeah.
and stuff like that. By the way, Madrid is a nasty cum slut, like pig bottom,
Yeah.
orgy sex club. Like there's sex clubs everywhere in Madrid.
Yeah.
If that's where you want to go to be like a pig bottom, that Madrid is the place to go, or Berlin. But Madrid is a much nicer weather.
Last time I was in London, I started talking to these 2 little boys at a gay bar. And they got into an argument between the 2 of them about Brexit. And the one who was anti-Brexit was very concerned about would it make it harder to go to Berlin.
Yes, that's
matters.
actually, it's a
Yeah.
concern. You've done stand-up in Berlin, though, Katie.
I didn't, but I went with my grandmother. Who I'm going again in September. She was.
Did you go to a stand-up show?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
got
I'm gonna do it.
Was
this
it English language or German?
Both. Yeah,
Okay.
it was a little fusion. Some of them would do half their sets in one and the other, but it was interesting because it's stand-up's kind of similar, but like it seemed like we were just in Silver Lake, but people were just speaking German because even the like intonation, the like everything. It was
That's
like I
very
could tell
funny.
the punchline, but I just couldn't understand what they
I
were saying.
hate American cultural arrogance, but love the fact that we define the vibe.
It
Like,
was wild. Everybody, and also because of globalism, everyone just shops at H&M. Everyone looks the same.
Yeah.
It was even in like a new coffee shop brewery in Berlin.
Yeah.
And all the dudes just looked exactly like I would think they were going to open their mouth and just sound like American.
The aristocratic joy with which, like, however much any of us don't matter in Los Angeles, are not mattering in Los Angeles matters so much more anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I feel bad about it sometimes. Like, I was in Vancouver last month and I like went and like half-assedly wanted to crash a show, and it was like a good show that was overbooked, and then like a Canadian comic who lives here now was like, no, you should put Guy on the show, and I like felt very guilty about it, but like
No,
it's also nice that people are
Yeah.
like, LA, you are
Yes.
from LA, yes, please do our show.
It is true. They did that in Oklahoma City, and I remember just telling them, because we were sitting in someone's backyard, this street that your house on looks like Van Nuys. So this could, if you had kidnapped me, and then I would have thought I was in the valley somewhere.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not as impressive as you think it is. You know?
I also do love going to those cities that have decided to try really hard in a Silver Lake way, or getting to see those corners of like Salt Lake City that are like trying too hard, because they in many ways are giving you a better life than you're getting here.
Right.
You know?
And you still have the same, there's hipster coffee shops in Fresno.
Yes.
You can do it.
Oh, there's hipster Mexico City. I was so surprised when I asked for an iced coffee in Spanish. They didn't know what I was talking about because they don't. It's not like a Mexican thing traditionally to ice.
You say
your coffee.
iced coffee?
No, you say cold brew. Me da un cold brew. And then I asked for café con hielo, and then she was like asking me in Spanish, "You want me to put ice in hot coffee?" And then she said cold brew, and then I was like, "Yeah." And then she pointed to the menu, and it said cold brew.
Yes.
It's like, and it was like in a very hip part of Mexico City, and I was like, "Oh, this culture is like global now. We've taken over everything."
Yeah.
How much have you done stand up in Spanish?
I've never done stand up in Spanish.
It is always interesting to me, that question of sort of like that capacity, because it's such a language based thing, and like I'm always interested when I go to Montreal about the people who do. I've only met like one or two people who do both francophone and anglophone comedy, and everybody's like, yeah, I speak both of them, but this is the language that I do comedy in. And I wish I spoke another language well enough to figure out whether I could riff in it. You
It's
know?
fascinating.
That's my goal, is to improve my Spanish enough to where I could do comedy in it. But I mean, there are people who are completely fluent, like
my
Chris
boyfriend's
Estrada, who
he's fluent, but he can't do it, and it's his first language, and he can't do stand up in Spanish.
I counter that he doesn't feel like it or doesn't want to. I think like if put to it, he could do it.
He could do it, but he feels like it's not the same cultural context.
Well, I
or
mean,
his
that's
style too. Wouldn't
That's the
translate.
thing. But even doing English language comedy somewhere else, there's always that question of like, does the thing that makes my joke a joke exist here?
Right.
I did love, last time I was in Montreal, there was a guy who was raised francophone but was doing English language comedy, a gay dude. I forget his name, but he was very funny. But he had like a tag that he could only do in French. And so he did it for this Anglophone audience who live in Montreal, so all speak French.
Right.
And like everyone got the tag didn't work in English, and everybody got the tag, and then I didn't get the tag, and it made me sad.
Yes. Speaking of that, Guy, you are a very good stand-up.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
you are a big
Yes.
deal
Very kind.
everywhere else and here.
You guys are
which
both
is
very good
exciting.
stand-ups as well,
It's
who
very
I always enjoy watching.
That's very kind.
Although when I go on my DIY tours, but this is more just domestically.
Yes.
Saying that you're from LA is a death kiss, especially like in the Bay or Chicago.
In the Bay,
No,
yeah.
never
Yeah.
say that.
In the Bay Area, like,
Yeah.
but the thing is we, like, I started in San Francisco, and you did learn to dread and hate anyone who came from LA because they always had infinitely better credits than you and would get up at the punchline, and you would complain about how they weren't really funny. But that's not true of you. So,
Yes, but sometimes the host can turn an audience in their intro to like make you have an uphill battle. Like the
Yes.
first like
Oh, yeah.
5 minutes of your set is
Yeah.
like just trying to convince
Yeah.
like them like that you're fine, you know?
Yes.
You started in the Bay, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How long did you do stand up for in the Bay before moving here?
2.5 years.
Really?
That's
Yes.
pretty. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then you moved straight to LA?
Well, the thing is it's not because I believed in myself. It was just like I got a job for a cable network that was in San Francisco, and then they got bought and shut down, and then they fired me. But then they rehired me, like with a nice raise and promotion. But but we're like, you have to move to Los Angeles in a week, and like that was a great way of getting to move. But I was also not ready to move, and like it was kind of hard because the people who I had started with stayed in San Francisco, got to like hone themselves there, and like go to Montreal and stuff, and like start getting buzz, and then move like 5 years in, where I came here. No one cared who I was, and it was very hard. And I spent like a year floundering, and then I spent the year 2005 pretty much just playing World of Warcraft and listening to show tunes.
But not buying vintage tea sets.
Not yet.
I didn't have tea set money.
I didn't have tea set money.
But this is very interesting because this means you both are a comic who did not start in LA, but you also do understand the experience of starting in LA.
Yeah, I have long maintained that starting stand-up in LA is like being molested as a child. You are just exposed to things too early in your development that scar that give you insights, but also scar you. Like no one at a year and a half into stand-up should be like, she has a manager and I don't,
right.
you know? And I think that that's just something that does happen here. But yeah, I took a lot of pride in being from San Francisco because it is a city with like, where altiness and clubbiness were like, you know, two sides of the coin, and you had to be able to like understand both of them, where here things were very different. San Francisco is also a place where going over to Oakland and performing for like black rooms was like something that was done and made me much stronger and better. And like, but part of my journey was like about halfway through when I was sort of like rebuilding myself after the roughness of quitting Chelsea Lately and having my career fall apart, was having to just sort of like embrace myself as an LA comic and being like, you know, really embracing the skills that are core to being an LA comic, which is like not being scared or intimidated, like being pushy enough to get where you need to go, and like being breezily condescending to anyone who isn't from LA.
That's one of the biggest
I feel
lessons.
like that came very naturally to you.
I had to learn, but then it was fun to learn.
That's one of the biggest lessons I remember learning from you because when I met you, I was 19, a year into comedy, and you just Facebook messaged me because we had a mutual friend, and you were like, "You're a young homosexual comedian. I should know you."
Yes.
And we met at the Starbucks in West Hollywood,
Yeah.
and then we've known each other since. But I remember you've always said from the beginning, you need to be pushy, you need to ask again. You know what I mean? Which doesn't come natural to some people.
No, and it didn't come naturally to me, which may be hard for people to realize now. But like in San Francisco, you did wait to be noticed. It was tacky and wrong. You really wanted those guys who ran the cool show to be, hey, will you do my show? And it felt really lovely when it happened. But here, you can just float in a pool. You can't just float in the Pacific Ocean. Like you have to be moving. And if you just try to float here, you will get ignored, you know? And there are some people for whom that's true and magic happens. But most of the time, like I would say, LA in the end makes better comics because you have to be good at all of the things.
That's very true.
If you're not funny, it's not going to last. But also, if you're not a hustler, you're never going to get anywhere, or you know, you'll turn to vinegar.
Yeah, it's so true because
Yes.
there's so many people, and even when we ran shows, there were people we loved and thought were funny that we totally forgot about. Like, or
Yes.
or we'd be like, we can't believe we haven't had them on, and we've been doing the show a year. Or something,
Yeah.
you know?
It's very true. But also LA is a very interesting place because it's a place where people move to from around the country, around the world. So it's every 2 years, it's being flooded with hot, talented, funny people who are coming from other cities, fully repped.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're just kind of like, well, I've been doing it here for 10 years. I don't know what to do.
And also there's the danger of like it means that people have already seen you. They think they already have a notion of who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's really rough. Like the notion of being a new face here is like, it is either comic in one way or another. It is either comic because you've been doing comedy for 9 months and you should not be going to
Right.
Montreal, or like there was a guy in New Faces who's like 40 and has been doing this for a decade. And
Yeah.
like, I'm glad that stuff like that happens because it took the town a while to realize, for reasons that are so much my own failures, and also other things. But it took the town a while to realize, like, oh, hey, Guy, we should care and pay attention. And, I was really glad when that happened.
Yeah.
So when you moved here, and you said, so how long after you moved here did you get the Chelsea Lately job? And that was your first writing job, right?
So my first writing job was for this little cable network in San Francisco that I then moved down here with. That was for Tech TV and then G4.
That's what you're
how
talking
did
about.
you-
Got it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I was going to ask. So, and if people don't know, you were previously a lawyer. You went to law
Yes.
school and you passed the bar, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you transitioned into comedy. How did you get your first TV writing job?
So this was just a friend of mine. So a woman who was a stand-up in LA moved to San Francisco for a job as a co-host on like a late night talk show on Tech TV. And I met her at an open mic and she was like, "You're funny." And then a couple of months after that, she asked me to be a fat guy in a tutu for a sketch that they were doing, and I did it. And then they were just like, "Hey, do you want to come write for this thing?" And it was like very exciting. I was like submitting for a job. It was my first packet and I worked so hard on it. And then I ended up getting the job and it was wonderful. The job didn't pay that well. It was not that high profile, but it was like a validation to me.
Yeah.
And then 6 months into that job, got fired because everybody was getting fired, or just about everybody. And then they rehired me and moved me down here. So that was like 6 months after my first job. I had various jobs at Tech TV for like 2 years, and then we got merged with the E Network, like we in the offices with them. And I sat across from this gay assistant who on my first day there, I laughed at a joke that someone else made. And he leaned over to the muscly hot gay guy who sat next to him and said, "If I have to listen to that laugh every day, I'm going to kill myself."
Oh my God.
And I was just like, what a horrible person. These cute gay boys are being mean to me.
Yeah.
And then a couple of months after that, we became frenemies. And then I gave him a script that I had written. And he gave it to his boss, who was the head of development for E. And then when Chelsea Lately had a writing spot open, she recommended me. And I, yet again, got like a packet, went into, just like stayed up all night working on the packet, sent it in, and then I got the job.
That's
so
amazing. How early into Chelsea's show was she? Or how many years had it been?
the show had been going for 6 months.
Okay, so so you got in on the ground floor. I didn't realize that. Okay, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't completely the ground floor. Like much of the rest of the writing staff had been there since the beginning, but it was, early enough that everybody was still figuring out what was going on. And she was like on the rise. Like I got to be there for the 3 years when she was like turning into a thing. And it was really good experience. And it was really, it's like late night experience on a show hosted by a woman there's not a lot of that, you know?
You have an unusual trajectory in that you came to LA with a writing job.
Yes.
And then got into this, unusual.
Yeah.
Was the notion of doing a packet for the first writing job, the G4 tech job, like the first time you ever did a writing packet, did that daunt you in any way coming from being a stand-up?
I mean, it was really scary because, it was San Francisco. I didn't know anyone who had ever done anything like that, but it was very structured. Like what they wanted of me was very structured and it was clear. And I just, in my head, I was like, it didn't feel like the sort of opportunity I was going to get in San Francisco when I was starting. The other guys around me were like 4 or 5 years younger than I was and weren't doing anything but stand-up. And in my head, they were going to get to go be stand-ups and I was going to be a lawyer who did stand-up for fun. And I very much was like, they're going to be famous. I'm not.
Why did you already go into it with that mentality?
I think because I think just sort of like a mixture of that sort of like gay presumption that the world doesn't really care about my perspective and feeling like old and not cute.
Yeah.
I mean, at like feeling old at 25,
That's That's
Yes.
I mean, when I started stand-up, I was 18, finished Kathy Griffin's book, and thought, I'm wasting my life, I'm old.
Yes.
And then took a
Yes.
bus directly to Sunset
Yeah.
Grill in Hollywood and did stand-up.
And I met you when I was 25, and I was like, I'm everyone's mom, basically.
Yeah. Well, there is that way that like stand-up is like built by and for like 22-year-old boys in hoodies, and any of the rest of us have to learn to talk their language. And I think we have also done a really nice job of like yelling at them to stop being like that.
Right.
But it still does require, like, for any gay boy who's ever whiny about how broy the open mics are, which you were never like that. I will always be like, fuck you. This is what you have to go through.
I was the
Like,
opposite. I always felt I was the camp of I'm excited for the mic. I could not wait to get off of work
Yeah.
to go to the mic.
Yes, I mean, like, I'm always weirded out by those people who are like, I want to do it. I just hate open mics. It's like, no, you don't really want to do it.
Hey, some of them are getting on Colbert.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is there is that thing between like the Brooklyn gays and the LA gays, because they have been so supportive of each other, and they have popped and are so likely to do like cabaret-y or sort of like not so straightforward stand-up things.
Their aesthetics they feed into each other. You can see where they come from a little bit.
And they
you
also
know?
like they collaborate with each other because they are doing like other weirder projects. And I'm just always so proud of what a deep bench like LA has of like people who got jokes, you know?
Yes, but
Not haircuts.
I would argue the New York gays, the Brooklyn gays, they had it correct. I mean, I've said this to you before. They're the ones who are working, who are repped, who are doing it now.
Yeah.
All the LA gays, there's a few who are just starting.
Yeah.
Most of us, we are not even out of the stable yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The lack of community has hurt us. We have jokes, but no one's seeing it.
I know. And like the thing is but also New York is different. New York always had cabaret. New York always had a place for gay guys telling stories as long as they were divided by songs. I am very...
I tell you, I need to start singing in between your jokes.
Absolutely.
The thing is I resolutely am just like, fuck no, I do not do that.
Yeah.
Stop trying to put me into that. One of the reasons that it's more okay is because also the real stand-ups at the Cellar are able to be like, those faggots aren't real stand-ups. And like no one's gonna make a joke about how Solomon Giorgio doesn't have punchlines because
Right.
they would be torn apart by a punchline almost immediately.
Right.
The thing I am proudest of, I just want to say, is that first packet that I wrote for that first job. I was just so. There are just such rare occasions where you actually put the work into something that you should. Like, you guys have both done packets that were like, I waited too long on this, and it's just so nice that like a couple of times I did it the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Sometimes, although, do you ever feel this though, Katie? Do you ever feel like you put too much energy into a packet where you're like, let's calm down? You know what I mean?
Of course you overthink, and
Yeah.
it always just depends on how much time you get, which is you never know. Sometimes it's 24 hours, sometimes it's like sometimes it's 2. And
Yeah.
I feel like you're just
I think 24 hours is so much better than 2 weeks.
I think it is because we slave and we suffer over it.
And at the end of the day, they're always hiring someone they know. At the end of the day, they're almost never. I mean, like Nikki and Sarah did blind reads for their show. I did blind reads for my show, but like,
kudos to you for that.
fucking Conan's not. I don't mean Conan personally. I mean like the writers of any of these late night shows are not doing blind reads. They have somebody who they kind of want to hire.
Well, that's our question, and why we're like so curious to talk to you is always like, it's just always the same question is like, how the fuck do you get hired? You know, but everybody has such a different path. I mean, you have such an unusual path in, you know.
Well, I also kind of want to know, when you got into a comedy writing room at Chelsea lately, what was being in that room like for the first time?
Yeah, when did you feel like a real TV writer?
Well, I think so. what I had been doing before, I had like a lot of responsibility, but it was always sort of like solo. And there were other funny people at G4, but it wasn't like a room where we were pitching stuff around. I went to Chelsea lately with such a sense of like, I'm an imposter. Like, am I going to be able to survive here? And when I met the mostly old straight dudes who were writing for the show, it was this immediate moment of like, oh, okay. Like at that point in time, I think maybe Heather McDonald was the only other, was she the only female writer? So like showing up and yeah, because Jen Kirkman hadn't been hired and Sarah Colonna hadn't been hired. So being able to be like, oh yeah, they need a gay guy. Like this is Chelsea lately.
Like I'm needed, yeah.
And there is just that terrible feeling the first time you go into a late night room of like, everyone starts and they know each other so well. And I like sat down and someone was like, you don't sit there. You have to go sit over here. And they go into a rhythm that they know, and you just have to like dump into the double dutch and hope that you can survive. Yeah. But I also think that one of the great things about being a stand-up is like when you're listening to somebody else's joke, you are so frequently writing your own punchline.
Right.
And like it comes out of you, and being able to find that confidence. Like a late night room is so much easier because it's just jokes flying around and everyone is sort of like relatively equal when it comes to rank and how much you're supposed to be pitching. But when you get into like a scripted writer's room, so much of the time the adults talk, and then knowing when you're supposed to pop in with jokes or pop in with an idea is like a really rough game. And when I first started on the Mindy project, I had been writing for television for years before that. But I would sometimes pitch things and be a little quiet about it or not direct enough about it. And my colleague Tracy Wigfield, who was an executive producer on the show, was still a woman and able to like be like, Guy just said something that is very funny, and then repeat it and like do that sort of thing, which is great. And you know, that thing of at a table, sometimes people are like, oh, we're the big deals, we're the funny ones, and just aren't going to listen to you. And you know, you get into that thing of people repitching jokes that a woman has said moments before or shit like that, and what you need is somebody who's going to say like, hey, no, stop that. And you have to trust yourself enough to be like loud, you know, you have to know that your joke is good enough to be right. But there was sort of like a learning curve of like with Chelsea specifically, I would sometimes pitch a joke that required a specific word order or something like that, and she would like it at the table, and she would be like, yes, put that in the pack, like put that in the cards. And then when she would try to deliver it, she wouldn't deliver it because that's not how Chelsea works. And like those first couple of months of getting into how does she tell a joke was really fun. Yeah. And there's also that thing of like when you're writing for somebody else, having to be like, you know, being able to like, how does a joke about my pussy work? How does a joke about my period work? Yeah. And that's, you know, a fun challenge.
Did you find in the room, like, can you tell a difference between stand-ups and like kind of straight comedy writers who aren't stand-ups? Yes.
The biggest difference is stand-ups have an innate sense of how an audience will react. Like sometimes, especially like the worst of the Harvard guys will sometimes write jokes that are mathematically jokes that are not funny. And you would just immediately be like, no one's actually going to laugh at that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And, you know, that happens sometimes. It happens less on, I would say the worst thing on late night shows is when somebody is popular in the room or is like beloved of the host and people are laughing at that. But also, on a late night show, an audience, your host still has to get in front of an audience, and they are going to learn they don't like telling a joke that no one's going to laugh at. And so they learn to love and treasure those jokes that are good and the people who are giving them jokes that land and work. But sometimes, and I've not, you know, luckily many of the shows that I've worked on, I've really loved and found the people really, really funny. But you do sometimes have those people who are just doing what they think comedy writing is.
Yeah, that's really
Do those people have any of those? Do most of those people just kind of get the axe at a certain point?
Well, here was my big observation. Here's why people hate Harvard guy writers is because they all are able to graduate from college and immediately get a job that is very prestigious. And then the ones who are good only go on to more prestigious stuff, and they stay on shows and work there forever. And then the ones who are terrible slowly, like, fail their way down, and you have to run into them on 1,000 shows. So I first ran into those guys as
on their way down, on your way up.
Yes,
basically.
like a guy, like a couple of guys who worked at G4 who had previously, like, one of them had written for Seinfeld and SNL.
Wow.
And it's this question of, like, why are you here? And then I learned why he was there. And now he went and got a master's degree in philosophy, and now he is a conservative YouTuber.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God! What a wild the journey of a straight white man is always.
It's why we need more movies about those journeys.
Yes,
absolutely.
I've always said that.
No, but it was just sort of like a chilling thing, and me sort of thinking like, oh, all these Harvard guys are frauds, and then I went to the Mindy Project, which was full of, like, Harvard guys who got jobs when they were 22 and are astoundingly funny and sensitive and smart and good writers, and who are able to be white guys writing for a South Asian woman who listen to that South Asian woman enough to be able to write for her, you know?
Right.
In those rooms, also, did you perceive from the beginning a dynamic of, like, being a gay man in those rooms?
One of the nice things about being a white gay guy, or I would just say, like, gay guys get fucked over in our understanding of our place in the world, but you do have a sense of authority and place that I think is not so easily offered to women. So I think, and I also benefited from being on a late night show at the beginning where, like, a good joke is a good joke. And I also think being a stand-up gives you a sense of confidence about this'll work.
Yeah. Why do you think, are you saying that because gay men are still male over women? Is that what you're saying? In a room that you still get more respect than, is that what you're saying?
Like, the fact that we physically give you the vibes that the people in charge give you, like, goes a long way. I do think that there is a mind fuck that is placed upon us. And there was an article in Slate earlier about Mr. Buttigieg, who we will not speak of, but was basically like, oh, well, he has faced nothing. He is just a cis white gay guy. And it's like, shut up, you don't understand the mind fuckery. But also, my voice is still low, you know, like, and which is not true of every gay guy, but I do think there is a way that
you're also, like, a physically imposing person.
I'm very large.
You command a presence.
So
too.
I don't always,
so it's more power,
like, suffer in the way that some gay guys do, but I do think
that's why you need to keep bulking.
I remember observing that thing in a club of, like, the way that straight men felt comfortable turning off when there was a woman on stage. And that some women on stage, like, were not as willing to be certain that they were the most interesting thing in the room in the way that is just the base level necessity of stand-up comedy. There were things like, let's be fucking honest, on Chelsea Lately, a lot of jokes got pitched that were, you know, fags are gross jokes or something like that. And the thing is from the beginning, like, I didn't even think about it. I was very like, no, you're not doing that. And, you know, I wasn't, like, I did have a ramp up of how comfortable am I being, but doing that. But once I knew that I had a place there, I was also just like, stop it, you know? And you know, and not just about gay things, but other things. And, like, they didn't always listen to me, but I at least said it, you know? I think once you get into narrative, those are weirder questions of who gets represented and how are we representing them. And I feel so thankful for the extent to which I've written on a lot of shows that are about women. I have been on majority female staffs more than any woman because like, they so frequently have to be the one woman on a show that is all dudes, where if I'm on a show, it's a lady show, you know?
That does reinforce my opinion about comedy, which is women are responsible for giving gay men most of their jobs.
Well, it's like, you know, like, gay men, like, currently I am working on a show that is run by Gabe Liedman, that is executive produced by Sean Hayes. Like, it's nice and exciting. it's also not what has happened for most of my career. The hands that have been extended to me are Mindy Kaling, Sarah Silverman, the Joan Rivers job I got because of a gay guy. But like, most of the comfortable mentorship I have gotten has been from women.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, without women, gay men would not work nearly as much as they do. Because the thing is this, and I've not been a TV writer, but I just know from stand-up, all the straight boys can be acquaintances with you. They can respect you. They can come up to you all day and say, you're so funny. They won't hire you. And they won't even think to do that. Because they won't collaborate with you. They won't recommend you to their reps. They're just not going to think that way.
Because they don't think about you as like me. And
right.
And also with stand-up, just the thing of like the idea of being taken as an opener for things. And I feel self-conscious about in many ways. Sometimes I will be self-conscious about taking a gay guy as a feature act because I'm like, oh, this is a lot for this audience. Is this audience, this is what they wanted? And then with women, it's like, am I, how self-hating am I being that like, but also it's like, I also do definitely understand it as my obligation to be present for women and women of color within stand-up because like women have been so beneficial to me and I only benefit, like we all benefit from a stand-up world that sees our perspectives as mattering. Like there are some gay guys who have the philosophy of like, oh, I'll talk shit about women as much as the straight guys do and they'll see I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like you are getting to be a little mascot. You're not getting to be a participant.
Yes.
Like I am better off in a world where we are able to acknowledge that Jackie Cation and Laurie Kilmartin are masters of their craft who deserve as much as any fucking Bill Burr,
Right.
That's
it does seem like that in Hollywood right now, where in terms of gay guys getting work, it seems like you fall into two polar opposites. You fall into cute and twinky with highlighter femme, great, okay? Or you fall into repressed, closeted, or basically spouting like straight conservative talking points, but being gay, so there's a novelty. So you're either like hyper masculine repressed or this other femme side, but anyone in the middle doesn't really get any.
Well, I think that we are just not comfortable with the idea of gay men having perspective. Like, not that we're comfortable with women having perspective, but like gay men, it's like, in what way are you an accessory to my life? Like, and I think that there is beautiful transition. Like in the 90s, good work was done by gay men as handbag of lady. But I think it makes it hard now to have somebody.
Shout out to Rupert Everett. He was my dream. It's the basis of our relationship, I think.
Yes.
I mean, he was so much more than like the amount of biography that Rupert Everett brought to the table of like, oh yes, I've written 3 books about how I was a prostitute in the south of France. Like makes what he did in My Best Friend's Wedding, like he was never going to be consumed by that. He's the fucking best.
Yeah.
It is like realizing the number of sassy gay friends in romantic comedies who have been played by gay guys. I mean, you got your Rupert Everett, who were out at the time.
Oh, yeah.
You got your Rupert Everett. You got me. You don't have much in between.
Yeah.
I was the sassy gay friend in No Strings Attached in 2011.
I was. If you didn't say it, I was.
Let it never be forgotten.
Yes. And I just recently watched a YouTube video that someone uploaded from the late 80s just for laughs, and it was the all queer showcase. And it just made me cry because I was like,
all of those people disappeared.
all those
I was
people,
like, or is it because they were all in blazers?
No. They all disappeared. I looked up some of them. About 80% of that lineup is not working or not like in show business. Many of them were very funny. And I was just kind of like, wow, like there was just whole generations of queer talent that just disappeared into the air.
And it was one of the cool things about San Francisco. It was one of the rare places other than New York where I could go do a gay show and where I got exposed to people who were experienced and masterful at what they did, who were just never going to go anywhere else. And like, Marga Gomez in the 90s, like, got opportunities. She was like this gorgeous, super smart Latina at a point in time when we were excited about Latinas and lesbians. And like, she got to the 7-minute place and then no one had anything else for her to do.
Right.
And like, she still does these amazing one-person shows in San Francisco, but it just like pisses me off that there wasn't more of a world for her. Or like, you know, no one fucking remembers Bob Smith, the first gay man on The Tonight Show.
Yeah, I only heard about him when he passed.
Yeah. And like, no one's worried about it. And the thing is at the end of the day, gay guys kind of don't want stand-up from gay guys. We want stand-ups. We want like stand-up from women. We want gay guys to be hot or in a dress.
Right. It's very true. As I will tell all of those fucking college students at NACA who did not book me, they all came up to me afterwards, though, in the lobby and were like, we're queer and we love no bookings.
Yeah.
And it's like, thank you guys. Thanks for that. Wonderful. Yeah. What is your advice for queer people out there in the entertainment industry to have a career like yours, where you're working, you're successful, you have your own TV show, you know, you're writing for movies now. Like, how do you not disappear?
That's a very hard question. Here is advice that I gave to Mr. Bowen Yang a couple of years ago that has been completely not true of his career. But I still think what I said to Bowen after he had like a rough setback, and I just said, there's not a U-shaped hole in this industry. There's not a place where they just need exactly you. So you have to make the things that, like, you have to make that hole for yourself. And I realize that it can be bad to too much identify yourself as an other, but like, I think just being practical and saying like, it would be lovely if somebody spots you and is like, that's exactly what I've been looking for. But like, you have to be making your own things. Like, literally, you know, I came to a time after I left Chelsea Lately, we had the same agent. We were repped by the same agency. And then she expressed her dissatisfaction with me leaving. And then they did not represent me anymore. Who can say if these things were related? Yeah. But I was having a very rough time. And like, you know, there came the point when I was all out of money and I couldn't get a job. And I was like, do I have to go be a lawyer now? And that was when, you know, this idea for Talk Show the Game Show that had been floating around in my head for years, I was like, I'll just figure out how that would work and I'll start doing that. Because that was, I kept trying to find the next place for me within the industry. And I realized that what I needed to do was find the thing that I wanted to be doing while also trying to find the next place for me in the industry. At the end of the day, you have to like and love what you're doing. And the thing I always say about stand-up is like, you need to be happy if you just get to do stand-up, which is something like I worry about you, Jonathan, for so many reasons. But the fact that you love doing this means that you will always be drawn through by it. And there are those people who just get too pissy about the fact that it's not all coming together for them. And it's like, you just need to really be happy that you are getting to do stand up, you know? Right. But on top of that, but also we can turn very bitter if we just get to do stand up and don't get to do stuff on top of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, every day, I can't speak for Katy, but every day for me is a constant exercise in how to not turn into pure vinegar.
Yes. And the thing is you do stuff like this. You create opportunities for yourself. You remind people that you're around. Like, you kind of do have to just be twice as harding and hope that you get somewhere, and also just sort of understand the first half of the career is harder for you and the second half of the career is easier for you, because a lot of those interchangeable boys don't have anything to say, and they're able to get to the mid part of the career by doing what looks like stand up, and then once there comes a time that they have to have something to bring to the table, they don't have something to bring to the table. And when you've had to struggle, when you've had sort of like a journey in perspective, like you have something to say. And I also think when you have learned to look through other people's eyes, you are better able to adapt your skills to the world around you. I think, if anything, I'm a little too bad at working for, like, I'm too inclined to work for other people and don't necessarily enough sort of like focus on the things that are for me. But it has been nice in the last couple of years when people have been more likely to come to me with things and say like, hey, I would like to work with you on this, or sort of like, do you have a take on this?
Now, getting back to when you gave your script to that person who worked at E, the guy who you were frenemies with,
Yes.
was that your first narrative pilot that you wrote?
Yes.
What did you think going into that? Because I think people who are new at writing, writing your first spec or pilot is insane. And you feel like, I'm an amateur, I'm completely a faker, you know?
It's weird because there are those people who have like a degree in television who had someone sort of like shepherd them through the process of it. And I was definitely not one of those people. I didn't really know what a TV show was supposed to be. This, it had funny jokes and a strong take. And other people gave me criticisms like Peter Saji, who is now the showrunner of Mixed-ish and, wrote for Blackish Forever and is very, very funny. He was one of the freelancers who worked for me at G4. And when I gave him the script, he was like, no one wants premise pilots.
What's a premise pilot?
Premise pilot is a pilot where the pilot creates the situation that is the sitcom. So, a premise pilot of Gilligan's Island is they crash land on the island. Like a different pilot is they're on the island and they've been on the island.
Got it. So if I got Katy pregnant
Yes.
and then we raise our baby together, that's the premise pilot.
Yes.
Right.
There we go.
Peacock bought that this year.
Okay.
From Chris Schleicher.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but that's his real life, though.
That's his real life.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting.
But people gave me advice, and like the assistant that I gave it to, he like had a couple of notes for it, and I didn't necessarily believe in them, but I put them in because I wanted him to feel like he had participated, and that gave him a sense of attachment to it. And the thing is his boss read it and enjoyed it. I got the job at Chelsea Lately, and then it got handed around a little bit. The thing is that I have written specs since then that people haven't liked nearly as much, but that one people liked, and that got handed around. And that was a situation where the script got handed around, but it wasn't until somebody put together that, hey, that guy who was funny on Chelsea Lately is who wrote this script, that sort of like came together, and I started getting like a little bit of buzz.
In terms of, for people who are not repped, where let's say it's a very kind of like open submission type of thing where they're kind of like, just send anything, it could be a spec or a pilot. Is there a choice that you prefer? Do you prefer writing specs? Pilots do not care?
The thing is that essentially no one wants to read a spec of another show. When I say spec, I mean a pilot, like
an original
essentially
pilot.
Now people only want original pilots, which is fucked up because that's not the job. The job is not being able to like pitch a show, and there are so many people who go out without much experience and pitch a show and sell it, and then they have a rough time with it. Mindy Kaling is always like, I would sort of rather read your spec of a show rather than your original pilot, because I want to see if you can write for my show. But right now, what the fuck would you write a spec of? Because like nothing, there isn't that much that is like good or funny, and everything is so serialized that the notion of writing a standalone on your own is a little weird. So it is like a hard thing. Mostly, it's so hard to write a half hour on your own, and then once you watch people who have done it 1,000 times do it, you realize how much easier it is than you've been putting yourself through, and it becomes a much smoother process.
That's really interesting.
It is nice, but also terrible. You have to get in the room to figure that out.
Yeah. Do you like writing for late night or narrative more?
Well, so much of this is just defined by our industry in like a really gross way. Of a person on their first scripted job makes more than pretty much anyone who is writing for a late night show, unless they are an EP. And then it only gets better from there.
Yeah.
And it's also just not as hard of a job. And I'm proud that I worked on a daily show, and I miss that feeling of you wake up and pitch all of the jokes in your head, and
It
move
seems so
along.
hard to between the two, it seems like
it
harder.
lends more
Yeah.
to stand-ups.
Yes, and
Right.
and I one time to Emily Heller, because she just started in narrative, and I was like, you should work on late night. You're so funny. You would be great on late night. And she was like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
I show up, because when you're a staff writer, you really are just expected to speak once or twice a day on a narrative show and keep your ears open and listen and learn. Where, if you're at a late night show, you're just supposed to jump in and have jokes. And if you don't jump in and have jokes, you're not going to get another 13 weeks on that show.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you oh sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Do you feel like, so when you're in a room, like a narrative room, is it a very kind of clear distinction of these are story people, this is like the gun for hire to come in and shoot jokes into this, what's the
All of the titles on a scripted show are deeply defined and hierarchical. Everything from executive producer all the way down to staff writer, you understand that you have a rank. And it is less true on cable-y shows. It is less true in smaller rooms. But the more networky of a room you're in, where everybody is. And there is that difference between these are story people and these are jokey people. But if you are at the lower end of the table on a comedy show, you're probably not going to get to weigh in on plot that much. And that means you better be earning your keep when it comes to jokes. And it's always interesting seeing those people who were not stand-ups. Like at the Mindy Project, a fair number of people made it to the table by being assistants and stuff. Because I think women are more likely to take that path rather than sort of risking everything on I'll go to bars and tell jokes, and that's supposed to get me a job. Yeah. And also, let's be fair, I was a decade older than anyone else who showed up as a staff writer there. But also, you have to be developing that ability, because the time when you get to add content is when we're going through with jokes, and it really requires a more sophisticated understanding of how a joke works than a lot of people who just like TV, not just pitching a change that is parallel, but is really making things better. Okay. Can I tell you a lovely story from my first month at the Mindy Project?
Yes.
So I had been working there, and I was tentative. It was one thing that was really nice is I started midway through the season, so Mindy wasn't in the room and they weren't doing story stuff, so I think I might have been more reticent. But when I showed up, they were doing Punch Up, and so it felt more like a late night room.
Yeah.
But the showrunner left, and one of the other a co-EP took over typing, and it was the very nice lady who would repeat jokes and stuff, and so I felt more comfortable with her, and I pitched some joke. I forget what it was, but when the other showrunner came back in the room, he sat down and was reading through her jokes, and he was like, a joke should do two of three things. It should be funny, it should move the plot, or it should go to character, but the best jokes do all three. This joke does all three. And it was just this lovely moment. He didn't know that was my joke, but it was just this lovely moment. And of course the room was immediately that was Guy.
Yeah.
Which was very lovely. But just being able to identify shit like that, and also know when a callback is clever and know when a callback is shitty. You guys have been in enough goddamn shows to know when somebody's callback looks like a joke but isn't a joke.
Right.
And when you got your way there by being a script coordinator, you're not going to understand that in the same way. You're going to understand a lot of other things about the writing process, but not that. And it is interesting. The show that I'm on right now, there is a great stand-up who is a staff writer for the first time. And one of the things that's really cool is she's asking a lot of questions, which sometimes would be shit on. She's working with a showrunner who's really cool about it, but she's fucking learning things and figuring things out. And it can be hard and weirdly intimidating.
Yeah. I was going to say, you kind of talked about kind of do's and don'ts, but that's really interesting to hear about, yeah, just kind of like your value add in the room. If you can kind of.
It was really interesting. On the Mindy project, there was one staff writer who did not speak. He like pitched 2 jokes for his like 6 months there, and he did not get asked back. And then there was a writer who had been the writer's assistant and then came in, and they did not want to make the same mistake, and they talked constantly in a way
Oh my gosh.
that was like really rough. And just having that sense of like, just knowing, am I helping, can be a really hard judgment call.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you, when you are pitching as a low-level staff writer, jokes in the room, are you expected to perform in a way in my mind, it seems like it would be a little bit different for late night, which is just like jokes. But for something like narrative, is there overdoing it, selling your pitch, not selling it enough?
Well, I mean, there is that thing of, which I think stand-ups learn so beautifully, of like not understanding what off is and understanding what too much is. And I like, the thing is, in any room, there's always doing jokes for the room. And you can't do too much of that. You shouldn't do too much of that. But sometimes you're doing fucking jokes for the room because everybody being in a better mood is better. One of the things that was really funny at the Mindy project was you had all of these people who were not performers, who would sort of perform more when pitching a joke. They would like do the voices of the characters sometimes and stuff like that. And I would never do that. I always had like a very much a sense of, well, you should be able, like,
The joke stands on its own.
the joke should stand on its own. And sometimes for a character joke, like, that's not true. Like, what the thing that makes it work is the person who's doing it or how that relates to things. But yeah, like, I would never do that. And like, it's funny, the showrunner who hired me on the Mindy project, who I love very much, one of the things, he was telling everyone in the room what he had thought of them when he first met them in their interview. And the thing he said of me was, he seemed quiet for a stand-up.
I get that all the time.
Yeah, but I also think he was used to dealing with these like clubby guys who get brought in to like to do jokes, and they're like like trying to like perform for the room and be like, I'm a cool guy. And like, I am very much like, you know, I'm like you. I'm sort of like a cerebral comic who like, this is a joke that works. But that thing of like having to get to a place of, oh, I'm certain enough that this will land with the room, and then quick enough to get that out in a loud voice can be hard. And being able to deal with stuff that like doesn't land for the room, or have somebody like, what's interesting is finding the bosses who are best at bringing out the best in their employees, in writers, creative employees. Like, the thing I will like, Billy Eichner was the best at saying no to a joke, but making you understand that he like loved you for pitching. Because like, that is a show that requires a lot of shitty pitches.
Yeah, to get
like a lot of super gay or weird pitches being made, and understanding that thing that is like, it really is just a sensibility thing of, you know, being able to grasp that correctly. And, you know, you can feel like there's egg on your face after you say the thing. Cause like, you know, sometimes, all right, this is me getting pissy. Like, we had a Paula Abdul related topic on Chelsea lately, and I made a DJ Scat Cat joke, and no one knew what I was talking about and looked at me like I had just shit on the table. And then then I explained to them who DJ Scat Cat was, and then suddenly anytime Paula Abdul came up, somebody else at the table was making a DJ Scat Cat joke, and I was like, fuck you. Yeah. But like, you know, sometimes it like, the joke doesn't gel with the room, or it doesn't land, or it isn't like fully formed.
Right.
One thing I would say is, here's the tea. When you're a low-level staff writer, never always present people with a joke. Like, don't just say, oh, well, we could do something like this, or what if we... That's not for you to do. Like, you don't, except in the rarest of situations, don't hand somebody a kit for a joke. make the joke.
Yeah.
And if it isn't the right joke, but it's in the right direction, they will work it from there. But then the other thing is, especially as a lower level writer, like have you guys ever been encountered the idea of don't negative pitch or pitch fixes?
Pitch a solution, basically,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Don't just say something is bad. And
Right.
too many people think that that is part of their job. And like, it is your showrunner's job to say that doesn't work.
Yeah.
It is your job to say something that works. And I have definitely been in rooms where everybody was comfortable being negative,
Just
but
shitting on all the
but
stuff.
it doesn't come to an answer.
Yeah.
You know, like
Right.
we have to find an answer. We have to know how this would work, you know?
Are there days where you guys just couldn't get anything done, where it was just fucking around, or everyone was just like not firing on full cylinders?
Well, the lovely thing of like a daily show is you have to do something. And so there are definitely days like no one watched Chelsea lately and was like, everyone was excellent. Like no one was ever like, but the thing is we got it done every day, which is a thing. There are definitely days that are some more productive than others. I have been on shows where I have been on staffs where the showrunners were not great at what they were doing, and where positive progress didn't happen. That was the result of a showrunner not having a vision. It's a lot of responsibility, but in the late night sense, if someone hands you a list of 50 jokes and you can't find the 10 best jokes on that, that's your fault. And you don't get to, like, that is what your staff gave to you. And, you know, if you hired the wrong staff, fire some people and get new and better people. But you cannot just be hunting for better. You sometimes have to look at what is in front of you. Like, there are days that are sometimes less productive. And also, I have generally worked on shows that had more reasonable hours. There are some shows, like apparently on 30 Rock, because Tina was like on set so much of the time, there was a lot of downtime. There was a lot of, they worked until 2, but they like watched documentaries in the room and stuff like that. Shows I've been on have been more focused than that. But there was this delicious time of the year when all of the episodes were written and we were only just sticking around to like do punch up or like pick up audio on stuff where we played a lot of GeoGuessr. We would just like watch documentaries, which was very fun. But it's the reason that even on a show that is not daily, you must like the schedule has to be in charge, and everybody has to respect the schedule. And it was very funny. The show I'm on now, there's a pilot, and then I'm writing the second episode because I'm one of the 2 co-EPs on the show, which is like exciting, but it also meant that I was having to establish the pace for how long does it take to get an outline done? How long should an outline be? And it was like kind of pressure. And then, you know, the showrunner kind of being like, this is great, but it's a little more dialogue than I think is necessary. And just being like, I hope I do it right.
Oh yeah, because this show that you're on now, you are in a position now of being on a higher rank in the room, and this is this co-EP? I mean, you had your own TV show, but in terms of a co-EP for narrative, this is kind of new territory.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And can we actually also, we need to talk about you getting your own TV show.
Yes.
And I would...
Can I just ask 2 questions?
Absolutely. Yeah. Go.
Since you came to comedy from another career and you feel like you're, quote, older than everybody, how do you think that that's benefited you?
Being trained as a lawyer gave me much more clarity of mind in taking facts and structures and working them together, which I think, I mean, I always say that like it drained me of my soul, but I think that there is benefit to that. And I think as time goes on, maybe the highs aren't as high, but the lows aren't as low. And so you're just able to sort of like manage yourself through stuff that would maybe crack you. Like,
I mean, just that kind of just being maturity.
Yeah. Like, you know, I hear some stories about some kids who get opportunities very early and they have a rough time with it. And I think I just knew, like, you know, I don't know, I've made terrible mistakes, but like I've kept going.
Yeah.
I think so. And like, I've definitely had like very low times when, 2011, 2012, it was hard to get work. And I think I just had a scrappiness of just like do what it takes.
Yeah, you seem very tenacious.
Yeah. And look, I'm also lazy, but, I think
Best comics are.
I think that thing of being able, some people I have known like get presented with something and they're like, I can't do that. And I think I have behaved a little bit more like, I guess I have to do that. I mean,
Figure it out, yeah.
Fucking working on Punk'd. Let me tell you about Punk'd. Punk'd was like straight boys who were like so proud of themselves for like having this job and thinking they were so cool. And they were like totally having sex with all of the famous girls who were on the show. And they were like very much the right sensibility for it. Haha, wouldn't this be funny? And I was wrong for it, but I was able to I essentially just typed things out for coked up boys. And it was not a good job and I hated it, but I fucking got it done,
That was like,
And that's an iconic credit. I mean, as a bitch raised in the 2000s, I mean, my God, like, ugh.
I mean,
this was very late Punk'd.
Yeah.
You helped because, I mean, you wrote for Punk'd, you were on Chelsea. I mean, you helped form 2000s culture, especially for like people like us. The first time I saw you was on Chelsea Lately on a desk completely naked.
Oh, yes.
And I felt, and I honestly,
you felt seen.
No, I did. And this was in high school around the time that I was like very into like Kathy Griffin and Margaret Cho and like really into stand up. And then thinking like, and then seeing Chelsea Lately and you on it and being like, oh, maybe you can carve a space out and do this.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And the thing is like, I will criticize that show and I will criticize her, but she was so generous and wonderful about that and really was like, shared the spotlight really nicely in a way that not everybody does. Like, and so did so many other people. W. Kamau Bell, like,
Yes.
like, like it's really nice. And also like Chris Rock when he like EP Totally Biased, it was so much about like, let's give voices to people who don't have voices. So
Chris Rock seems to be really good at that. Like even from suggesting Leslie Jones to Lauren, being like, this woman is ready. It doesn't matter that she's 50.
Yeah, no. Well, that's the thing that's so interesting to me is this readiness to just like when you've ignored people for a really long time, some of them are going to be like not exactly who you're looking for. Like I remember when Jesselnick had a show and I was like, do they have any female writers? And my friend who wrote on the show was like, no, they tried really hard. And he listed the people who they were asking and they were like the buzziest of female comics, but it wasn't the people who are good at roast jokes. And it was like, just a little like, fuck you, like Tig's not 22 because when Tig was 22, nobody knew that they needed Tig,
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that now, as you have a long list of credits behind you, do you think that writer rooms are getting more diverse than they were in the past?
Yes, but how that plays out is interesting. Like a lot of the time, I think people are behaving as though it's the trouble of it's still mostly white guys in charge. So, and I asked a showrunner who like the second season of her show shifted to focus more on characters of color. And I was like, how do you write that show while being the showrunner? How do you not make the wrong choices? And she was essentially like, there's no good answer. I hired a high level black female writer and a lower level black female writer. And I told them, you can always countermand me on anything here, but I still can't trust that they are able to trust that, because at the end of the day, I'm the one who's in charge. Like, there's no good answer. So much of the time, the only person of color in the room is the lowest ranking person. I was on one show where the only person of color in the room was the writer's assistant. And how much that bitch stepped up and was like, we can't do that.
Wow.
Really beautiful. And I don't know that they have gotten as much mentorship from the person who was running that room as they would have if they had known their place.
Yeah.
I think that so much of the time like the people in charge can see diversity as an obligation or symbolic. And it's rough. I mean, just down to, there was a joke on 30 Rock about where Twofer says, "Is that why my check is a different color?"
Yeah.
And it sounds like a joke until you realize, in a lot of rooms, the check for a staff writer of color is being paid for from a different fund from everybody else's, salary. And it leads to a situation where rooms, you'll have somebody who comes on for a season, doesn't get asked back, and then they just keep cycling through staff writers of color instead of getting to a situation where you have a co-producer of color. And then there are situations, I was on one staff where it was a very small staff. It was only 6 writers, 2 women of color, one of whom was showrunner level. And our showrunner just didn't listen to her. And it was you have this person here who can stop you from making mistakes, who can guide, this is a proven commodity who can do this job. And, it is a weird mix of collaborative and authoritarian, where that person who is in charge is still making the calls. And those people are much less diverse. And there's also this way that we have this idea that writers' rooms, that the white guys are the funny.
Right.
And so when it comes to late night shows, there will so frequently be this sense of the people of color are here symbolically.
Right.
You see that so many in scripts and in just produced things too.
Yeah.
Where it's they have a bunch of people of color. They don't get to do the comedy though. They're setting up the white people to be silly and ironically racist and funny.
Yeah. If I see that joke, if I see ironic racism one more time, it's my least favorite thing when they're like, "Oh no, we're all wearing white and it says whites only," and then a poor black person has to be
yes, noble, it's really rough. And so much of the time just comes down to, we're not working hard enough to find those people who can do the job and do it well, and also do it from a different perspective.
How has all this fuckery with the agencies and the WGA changed things for you in terms of getting jobs, if it has at all?
I mean, the thing is I've worked just as consistently and not had to pay 10% to my agents. My agents are great and have done a lot of things to develop stuff for me. But at the end of the day, my current job I got from a DM on Twitter. My job at the Mindy Project I got from a DM on Twitter.
Wow.
So much stuff is just somebody knowing you and knowing that you can do the job and asking you to do it. What
would be, and this is a lofty ask, but what would be your advice to people like us who are very, I'm going to just go ahead and say, just very much on the outside, meaning we're not repped. We have to wait for chances. When we do get a chance, it's oh my God, feast or famine.
I know,
really,
we're like wolves.
We're cunning. We're oh, did I meet that producer that one time? You will get an email from me asking for a packet. You know what I mean? I have to do that or else I would get nothing.
No, and the thing is I think when you do, I mean, you have to be pushy. When you submit a packet to a show, emailing the person who works on that show to be will you look at this packet? Or, hey, if you hear anybody bring up my name, will you vouch for me? Having good stuff to show. And I mean, the great thing about stand-up is it is this beautiful calling card where people do see you, and people don't even you don't necessarily know it when it's happening. But the other night I went to the Humanitas Awards with Lindy West, and the other people at our table, because we're the other Hulu show that was nominated for something, which was The Handmaid's Tale. And the nominated writer from The Handmaid's Tale was "Oh yeah, I read the names of the people who were going to be at the table, and one of our writers had seen you do stand up, and so we started talking about you." And it's you don't realize it at the time, but just doing stand-up in LA is like a beautiful investment. But also like, you know, building a brand so that they do very much remember, oh yes, that was Jonathan, you know, is important. And like using the people around you to have us, like when you get the moment to send something, being ready to send something. Like one of the things I'm so proud of from you is, am I allowed to talk about the Gloria Calderon-Kellett of it all?
Sure.
But just when somebody said to you, do you have a spec script? You said yes. And then you wrote a spec script.
Overnight.
Yes.
Which she responded positively to.
I mean, the thing is like at the end of the day, you guys are going to be able to put jokes into things. And it literally, like, even in a world where our comedies aren't as funny as they used to be, it's like, that's what matters. Like, they just want to know that you have the capacity to work hard, listen, and that you have jokes inside of you. It is rough and hard. And then the other thing is, like, make things that are the right forum for you. Know what your skills are. I mean, it's the best thing about stand-up is, like, talking about the things you like to talk about most is going to be powerful. Like, it's going to be the powerful thing that you have to leverage is like, we are able to build arenas that are for us, you know, like Talk Show the Game Show, which is the like format that I did and then was a show on True TV, like was just very much suited to my bombastic, nitpicky, like, combative nature. And it's now a little bit sad that like the show has come and it's been like canceled. Now it's like, oh shit, I like have to invent a new form. Like if I want to be able to do this again, I have to invent a new format. That's also fun. I have to figure out some other way that is a different cool forum for some other cross section of my skills. And like being able to do stand-up for stand-up's sake is wonderful. But I would say it is more like wanting to just be good at that and have that flower for you is like maybe something that straight white guys get to do.
Yes.
And like that we don't get to do as much.
Yeah.
But like it's hard work, but creating those forums for yourself where people really do get to see you being your most self, like they don't always work out. It doesn't always turn into a TV show, but I remember like when Heather Thompson used to do a show that was like Tea Time with Heather. It's like, yes, that's like that is somebody getting to like that is getting to know Heather. Did you guys fucking go see Jacqueline's show when it was in town?
No.
Get on Your Knees. Like it's just Jacqueline Novak, who you could watch at a show, and like, you know, my immediate reaction to Jacqueline Novak was like, oh, what a delightful presence, like, oh, how fun. But also like 7 minutes of somebody else's show like is not necessarily giving you exactly what you wanted out of stand-up. Like first time I saw her, she was like pacing around and she was talking, and then there was noise at the back of the room and John Early tried to shush them, and she said, no, my job as a stand-up is, if nothing else, holding attention. And I was like, I will respect this woman for the rest of my life. But like Get on Your Feet is an hour and a half of dick jokes that all of which builds to a complex and beautiful argument about women's bodies and narratives. No one else can do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Jacqueline Novak built a thing that anyone has to look at and be like, that's genius. And like no one else could do that. And it's hard to find that thing for yourself. And sometimes it's a journey and a struggle. But there's also something so lovely about like all the stand-up we do is research for that, because we decide exactly what we want to do in those 7 minutes, you know, or 10 minutes or 15 or whatever it is. And I think we get to understand what our voice is. And I don't think I've always done a good job of being able to transfer those stand-up skills to like auditions and stuff. And I think there are those people who really do so intimately understand their voice that they are able to go into an audition and not do what an actor does, but do what a stand-up does, and have people just like
Well,
I think that's nice about being in stand-up for so long is that I feel like we both as much were like frustrated at times. It's like the longer you do have way more sense of your voice. And like I loved our web series talk show because it was like we were like, if we could do our dream ridiculous thing, what would we do? And we did it. That was fun.
It is true. Yeah. Honestly,
Living with Jonathan and Katy. Check it out on YouTube.
I would do it if Logo wanted to greenlight us for their digital and pay us $20 an hour to do that show. I would absolutely do it.
Yeah.
We had so much fun. But one thing I want to talk to you about before we end this episode is you getting Talk Show the Game Show on air, because at this point we have friends who have TV shows either in the works or that are already on. You were one of the earliest people that I witnessed see the process of a show from afar, because I remember when Talk Show the Game Show was in its live incarnation, I remember going to one of the pilot presentations at Meltdown, and then you very graciously asked a bunch of stand-ups who needed money, hey, we need stand-ins, So I remember coming for I think several different studios to do stand-in work. And the first studio was smaller, it was in Universal City. The next one was even bigger. And then suddenly it was on TV. And then there was another season. It was like you saw over the years how so much work and went into this idea that was a nugget in your head to then being a full-fledged television show. Can you talk about that?
Well, I mean, the thing is we did it for 3 years before we got that far. And it was really hard because my managers wouldn't come and watch it. Like, my managers wouldn't come and watch this thing. And I was like, and I fired them because that's not good. And, it's rough because you have a crystallized idea in your head. And, it took me a while to figure it out as a show. And that's one of the benefits of doing it for 3 years before anyone came and looked at it was we started to understand the show, and I just so fell in love with the show. After we did the show for the first time and it worked, I could not go to sleep all night long.
That's amazing.
I was so excited about it. And then the next night I had writing work, I think, that I had to finish. And then I had to go to work at Punk'd, and I was so fucking my brain was not working. And then the guy who was Ashton Kutcher's producing partner, he just was telling us stories, and the night I had been up for 50 hours, and he just wouldn't shut up. And I wanted to get out of there so badly. The thing is that persistence, it took a lot of persistence to get people to pay attention to it. And then once they paid attention to it, it really took persistence a lot. To me, I was just it was such a clean, good show that ran on its own and was always funny, and people were showing up to it and always having a good time. But most of the networks that watched it weren't into it. And I really so appreciate that True TV took a chance on it. And it is scary and hard and sort of brings out the worst in you when you're getting a show of your own and you're like, oh God, I really hope that this happens. It was so lovely and so much fun. I cannot be mad that it got canceled because I got to do it.
Absolutely.
And
it's like a jewel in your crown.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was really, it was really lovely. And it was nice when I was doing it to go back to a writer's room. I remember after the first season, I went back to the writer's room in the Mindy project, and it was just oh yeah. When we're done, I get to go home and not worry about this.
That's
and
nice. At least that.
Yeah, it's it's somebody else's problem.
Also, what I really loved about it going to television is it did keep that thing about it from the live show in the television show, where it felt like we were all gay men and straight women lounging in an apartment, drinking, and literally just having so much fun, being ridiculous, talking about pop culture, playing a game. It felt like adult friends having fun in a living room. That's really what it felt like.
It was full of chaos and aggression. And I think one of the things that was loveliest about that show that would be is hard to capture is anyone being who they were was doing that show well. It really was. The first times we had people come and not understand what was going on, but still do great. In the live show, Michelle Buteau came, and was like, we're friends, but she did not know what she had signed up for, and she outscored everyone, and it was like, yes, this is what this show is. And I probably should have maintained more of a degree of like, don't take anything too seriously, just have a good time. I think I probably stressed out too much with the show, but I think it's really hard for us. One of the things that's great about stand-ups is that we doubt ourselves a lot and spend a lot of time. It's like this great process of like, you go and do a thing and then you stop and then you're like second guessing everything that you did and just like, if I pause a little there, or maybe this will work better. But over time, we're able to get to a point where we really like trust ourselves on stage and have that confidence that comes with like trusting yourself. And I think coming to a point with the show that I trusted it. I trusted it under a variety of circumstances. Like, we didn't just do the show here. For a year I was in New York, I did it. We would go to festivals and I would like bring the stuff in a box. Like, we had done it under adverse enough circumstances that I knew how it would hold up there. And when I think about it, like with scripts, like really, like this one thing that I'm working on now, pitching it so much and rewriting the pitch and like doing that so much that I really feel a great deal of intimacy with the story makes me trust a little bit better that I will be able to write that and not fuck it up. Just because you know it. And like, I think that it is a very stand-up skill to be able to always to mix doubt and trust in that way of like, I know how to poke at it. I know how to prod at it or change it, but I also can trust what works. Like it's that mixture of reliable material and
trying something new.
And trying something new.
Yeah.
So like I really think, and it was a lot of luck. It was luck and Wanda Sykes and Paige Hurwitz helping out with it, and all of that. Being great, and also being a thing that I could invite people to come and do, where it wasn't just, inviting comics to come do it where I knew they would have a good time. Some people did not. Al Madrigal did not enjoy doing that show. Bonnie McFarlane did not enjoy doing that show. But then there were so many people who came and did it and were like, that was just such a fun ride. Like Julian McCullough was immediately done, and in the most stand-up of senses was like, I want to go again.
Didn't you kick a comic off the stage at one of the live shows though?
Oh yes. Well, I mean, that was always part of the game.
Because he wasn't doing it. You just kicked him off.
Is that like you could be thrown off of the game for being boring, and people were definitely thrown out of the game for being boring. I think one time Shelby Farrow was thrown off for not knowing what a person should know. But like everyone was so game and so cool about it, and was like, the thing is, it was a different style of roastiness, and it was like a style of roastiness where the people in charge were gay guys and women largely, totally. And that like changed the vibe of it. And I think that was so much of what made it fun. And also, there were many straight guys who were good at it.
No, it was great. We did it in Palm Springs, and a lot of us were nervous because we didn't. Half of my jokes bombed as a judge, but you have to bomb to kill later on.
You did really solid work, and I'm pretty sure I went to you first always.
But we were happy to. But all of us comics, we were like nervous, but it actually worked out really well. It was very fun.
Well, and I also think we can do the stuff. We spend so much time doing what we decide to do that it can be fun to let somebody else be the dom of our comedy set.
Yeah.
Also,
we were very sub that
in
night.
defense of you, Katy, was that audience a similar audience to when we did it, which was an older, all white, weirdly Scandinavian crowd?
Yes. Which are my people. I mean,
I thought we had a great show in Palm Springs.
It was really fun. Yeah. It was an older crowd, but it was fine.
Which time are you talking about?
When you and Casey, and I had to host and do 20 minutes, and I did like, it was a little bit pulling teeth. I mean, it was fine, but
No, that was just doing stand up in Palm Springs.
Yes.
But that was just a weird crowd that didn't know that it was going on.
Yes. I mean, you even had to tell me afterwards. You were like, Jonathan, stop talking about it. It went fine. And you handed me a cocktail.
Well, it was also one of those situations of like going from not stand up to stand up for a 3-person show in like a space that is not a comedy club is weird hosting work.
Yeah, and
for sure.
not a gay crowd at all. The only gay people there, because I took a poll, were the barbacks and the bartenders. And they loved us.
Yeah.
They were like, oh my God, we loved you guys. I'm like, I wish it had been all men like them. Just, you know, so.
Well, but it was still fun though.
Yeah.
I don't know. We are coming towards the end.
Yes.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, Guy, is there anything you would like to plug? Any shows or anything?
Oh, my book, My Life as a Goddess, is available wherever books are sold, now in paperback. And follow me on, Twitter is a hellscape, and I almost never post anything on Instagram. So, I don't know.
You do have you dressed as Lena Dunham still up on Instagram, which I treasure.
Yes. Thank you. It means a lot to me. And I'm doing David Spade's show in February.
Oh, great.
great.
So-
on panel or stand up?
On panel.
That's great.
Yes. But they're doing stand-up now, which is cool.
That's the best show on TV right now for stand-up. They let Rachel Mack do her stand-up how she does her stand-up.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't censor her at all, and her set was like great because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great. Well, Guy, thank you honestly
Thank
so
you.
much. You're so successful, and we're such
That's very sweet. Thank you guys for having me.
People.
We're just little pitiful peasant
We're just
sluts,
little
just
sluts.
at your feet.
I am big fans of both of you.
Thanks,
thank you,
Guy.
Guy. Take care.
Thank you.
Living glam, living rock, living with Jonathan and Katy.